fastest show in sports.
We are still following the case of the LA Clippers, Steve Ballmer, Kawhi Leonard, and whether or not the Clippers actually tried to circumvent the salary cap by giving Kawhi some $28 million under the table. In case you haven't seen it yet, I thought it was important for this discussion that you see and hear what Steve Ballmer said on ESPN. He completely, unequivocally says, we didn't do it.
Up front, I want to say one thing very clearly. We, the Clippers, have abided by the salary cap circumvention rules because that's the right thing to do. And we have done that. I happen, for what it's worth, to think it's a very important rule in terms of promoting competitiveness and equal playing field across the league. But whether I agreed with it or not, it's the rule. And we've absolutely abided by that.
Now, right out of the box, Mark Cuban came out and came to the defense of Steve Ballmer. And remember, this all started with Pablo Torre on ESPN on his podcast, where he basically came up with a pretty good smoking gun that showed bank records of money being put into a bank account, and then within a day or two later, that money being pulled out of the bank account by Kawhi Leonard. So Mark Cuban went on Torre's show, and he defended Steve Ballmer. He says, basically, Ballmer got scammed by Aspiration. That's the company that created the deal with Leonard to pay him basically this $28 million. He said scammers do scammy things. And of course, he took a shot at the end where it's sad that Pablo Torre didn't take the time to find out how these scammers pulled off their scam. The idea that the default is Ballmer, is the bad guy, is going to backfire on him. Not necessarily so when you consider that Torre has further evidence. He's going to need more. But in essence, the NBA is still looking at this possibility, and they're going to continue to investigate. Now, here's where the story takes a new turn. The investigation's still underway by the NBA, and I think it's solid. They have to do this. Because it is not a secret that there's a lot of underhanded dealing that goes on, not just in the NBA, but in other sports when it comes to circumventing money. I mean, this isn't anything new. This has been going on in sports for years. Look, the best cheaters when it came to throwing money under the table for a long time was college football, then college basketball. I mean, look, when I first came up in this business right now, we covered teams that we knew they were paying players under the table. As a matter of fact, some of us may or may not have actually been at a practice session one day for a certain bowl game when we actually saw envelopes of cash being spread around. We didn't say anything. If indeed this happened, may or may not have happened, we didn't say anything because we would have lost our jobs. We wouldn't have been able to report anymore on the team and what was happening, so we kept our mouths shut, which thankfully people today are not doing because we've learned if anything like this happens, we don't want to get caught. So then this comes down to another podcast. And again, pretty much everything these days is being said on podcasts. This is a podcast with Channing Frye, Richard Jefferson, and Kendrick Perkins. And they discussed this issue of Torre, the story, and the Clippers. And I got to tell you, it didn't really catch me totally by surprise, but what Channing Frye said it starts a whole new conversation.
First of all, why are you snitching? No, why are you snitching? Well, who cares? If you, listen, do you know how much this Lemon Perfect bottle was? Probably 28 cents. This is what Steve Ballmer thinks of 28 million. He's like, oh, here you go. You want this? Here you go. He don't care. He don't care. Also, why are you snitching?
Who's snitching? Who's snitching? The reporter?
Snitching.
No, the reporter's job is to snitch. Our job is to keep it quiet, right? Like, Ballmer didn't tell. Kawhi didn't tell. So Pablo's doing what he's supposed to do. And he's doing an absolute great job. Shout him out for this investigation, right? Again, all of these things are allegedly. We were talking about Malik Beasley and all of his drama, and then it turned out to be allegedly, not be to not be as true as we know, and as he is in a position where it looks like he's going to be able to possibly play again. If you would have asked people 2 months ago, it would have been a completely different story. So all I'm going to do is play both sides of it and say this, allegedly. Now let's get into, if this really did happen, it's happened before. Everybody knows the Joe Smith deal. Everybody knows what happened with Joe Smith. If you know the NBA, this is not the first time. This won't be the last time. This happens all the time.
Oh, baby, let's open up this can of worms right now, because we're going to empty this out onto the table. First of all, Fry saying that Torrey snitched is possibly, without question, one of the best bullshit nonsense comments that I've heard all week long. I mean, Pablo Torrey's a reporter. He did his job. He followed a story. He came up with source material. He presented it. He didn't just say sources say, which is what most people do these days. Now, and again, in defense of that, sometimes those of us who've been around for a long time, we get told things by people. We just get told. And we don't want to say anything. We can't say anything, because that then contradicts a source and puts somebody else in trouble. We don't say it. We say sources. Torrey didn't do that. He's got bank statements. He's got evidence. So for Fry to say that Torrey is snitching is complete bullshit. Torrey did his job, and Fry knows it. But see, Fry's one of these guys who's going to make apologies for his sport, for his buddies in the game, and make sure that nobody gets caught. Who knows? He could be best friends with Kawhi Leonard. We don't know. But that's just a nonsense statement. Now, second thing. Richard Jefferson, and I respect him for what he said, but there is a key here. Richard Jefferson spent a little bit of time in there giving Pablo Torrey chops and giving him congratulations. He has to. Jefferson works for ESPN. Pablo Torrey, technically, works for ESPN. So in essence, he's not going to drum down on one of his own guys. He's going to make sure that Torrey looks good. Okay, he's playing the company line. He doesn't want to upset Torrey. He doesn't want to make him look bad. He also doesn't want to hurt his job and his big fat paycheck from ESPN either, because if he says anything negatively, the bosses up top will hold it to him. They will say, you shouldn't have said it. You should have shut up. Maybe you should have said nice things, which is exactly what he's doing. He's saying nice things. But in essence, he is correct. It's good. These are the kind of things that need to be out there. Sports is no longer just a game. Sports is a business. Sports is involved with gambling right now, which is one of the worst things that is bothering and hurting every single sport out there. It needs investigating. It needs people to uncover the cheats. Because if Ballmer knew about this, and he knew about $28 million or $3 million or whatever it is that was being handed to Kawhi Leonard one way, shape, form, or another, he's guilty. And going back to what Fry said Steve Ballmer doesn't care. Well, shit, Steve Ballmer should care. Know why? Because while $28 million doesn't bother him, doesn't make a dent. He's got that money for pocket change. He takes that basically to the convenience store to go buy a soda. All right? But it affects the Clippers franchise. It affects the franchise, people who work for the franchise, the players who play for the franchise, and they're not all superstars. It affects the fans. The fans are the ones in there paying the freight, and they're paying the ridiculous prices to go to games in Los Angeles or any place for that matter. Steve Ballmer sure as shit better care about what's happening with the Clippers. That's why Fry's completely wrong. Well, maybe he's right. Maybe Ballmer doesn't care. If he doesn't, then he's even more at fault. You got to care about the franchise, because it's not just you. It's not just a selfish moment for Steve Ballmer. This is a franchise. It is the careers of hundreds of people, maybe thousands of people. It's the careers of the guy and the gal who works the concession stand. I mean, you're hurting everybody down the line, so you have to maintain that high level of professionalism and above board. If he's not doing it, it's not Steve Ballmer he's hurting. Look, do you think Ballmer really cares? Let's just say that for whatever grins and giggles, that Adam Silver grows a spine, has a backbone, and says, all right, Steve, you're out. 3 years, you're banned. You are no longer a governor. You can't take any action. This franchise is going to hurt now because you're out. Ballmer doesn't care. He doesn't get paid. He's got more money than God. But what he should be bothered by is how that would affect the franchise. How the players would get worse, the personnel would get worse, the roster would get worse, the team would get worse, the team would continue to struggle, and the fans who are out there, they're not going to get discount tickets. They're going to still have to pay the full freight to go see this team, these Clippers that this guy put together and that this guy hurt with his own actions. So it's not as if it's just Ballmer. It has to be everybody that's involved. And Ballmer sure better care about what he's doing. Because if he is guilty, just own up, just fess up, take your punishment and go away. But if he is guilty, the Clippers are going to get hurt, and that's not fair to the fans. What is also part of this discussion that has to be looked at is when it's the best part of it, where Jefferson talks about the fact that this happens all the time. Yes, it does. Look, those of us who work around sports and have worked around sports a long time, we know that there's dirty dealings, and they've been going on for decades, for generations. I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever that there are players in the NBA who are getting money under the table, one way, shape, form, or another. However it's happening. Could be one, could be two, could be 100. I don't know. And I'm not casting aspersions, and I'm not going to pull out names. But I'm saying, if it's happening, it's not a shock. Because everybody is... Look, Richard Petty, the great NASCAR driver, said at one time where he said, it ain't cheating if you don't get caught. Well, maybe Richard didn't say it, but it sounds good to say that he said it. But he's right in many ways. If you don't get caught, it ain't cheating. And there's a lot of players who feel the same way when it's on the field. Look, Gaylord Perry was one of the best spitballers in baseball. He threw an illegal pitch, and he's in the Hall of Fame. And I think he got called on a spitball once. He was cheating. And even Perry was one of the guys who said, look, it ain't cheating if you don't get caught. So it's possible that this is going on in the NBA. It's possible it's going on in the NFL. Doubtful. There's too many checks and balances there. The NFL's got too much at stake. Could be going on in the NHL? I doubt it. Those players are really above board. I don't think it would happen there. Major League Baseball? I don't think it's going to happen there. So the greatest chance of this happening, of the cheating happening, is in the NBA. So Jefferson's right. They got to take a harder look at it. Not only that, but you have the gambling issue in college basketball. Do you have players trying to shave points in the pros? Look, all this is fair game. The bottom line is the Clippers are in a ringer right now. Ballmer's been caught. Something's wrong. Somebody's done something wrong. And Steve Ballmer, you better clean this up. Because if there's one thing that I scream about on a regular basis on every show I do, it's the fans, damn it. I don't want the fans to get screwed. And the fans of the Clippers are the ones who are going to get screwed by this if indeed they cheated. And that's not fair.
That's all, folks.